Before we get into rigging, it can be nice to finish out our character entirely. So there's a couple technical things when it comes to game art that you might encounter and you might need to create. This depends on your pipeline at the end of the day. Are these always necessary? Absolutely not, but they're good to know about and nice to have. So these technical things are going to be Lightmaps and LODs. Now, the way these are set up are a couple different ways. Lightmaps are a separate set of UVs, so it's a second UV set, set up for the purpose of light baking. Now, what's important to note is that game engines have an auto functionality to this, but you don't always use it, so I want to show you the process of setting these up, some basic rules so you understand how they are implemented when it comes to game art, and the proper place in the pipeline to do it, which is now, once we have basically our UVs in place for textures confirmed, and before we get into rigging, because it's a bit harder to add these UVs afterwards. And then LOD stands for level of detail. And basically, as you get further away from the camera, the LOD is going to change on the character or assets within the game. So the idea of the level of detail is it's basically just less polygons, and as you get further away, it gets less and less and less. Something to be aware of is this can be automated, so that is something to be aware of, and we can even automate this in Maya. It can also be done manually, which is something to be aware of. All right. Now, this is generally done after texturing in my experience. The reason why is you want to see how it's going to deform your textures, but you could, in theory, do all of these beforehand, so it really just kind of depends. Now, let's go ahead and start with the light maps, because we want the UV sets to match our LODs if possible on these. That way we don't have to rebake them. And then we'll look at the LODs separately. But these are two technical things you often have to do for games to just kind of make your assets a little bit more optimized and have more utility. So as with the other topics here, the Polycount forum has an excellent page here on Lightmaps. You can read through it, has some information about this, and has some links as well in terms of the setup here. For example, the Lightmap texture coordinates, this is going to be what we talk about here. Now, there's a couple different rules we're going to have for these. First off, we can actually pack these together. There's no issue with that. Lightmaps are ultimately packed together, so we could do the axe in the human together, which is kind of interesting. We can come up here to our UV editor with our game object selected here. Come under the UV set editor here, and you'll see the UV set editor currently has map 1. We could go ahead and click copy on this, and this will create a new UV set, and we could call this Lightmap. Now, the first thing we're going to do for this is make sure we're on it, so we have it selected here. And you could just come here to modify and do a quick layout to lay these out so they're all individual. There's a couple things we need to have for a light map here. And first off is no overlapping UVs. So one of the things that we did when we created our character is we made half of the character overlapped on the other side. That is a common technique, so we can save texturing space and we can essentially double our texture amount. So for instance, we're using a 2048 texture, but because the character is cut in half and overlapped, it's the equivalent of using a 4096. Likewise, if we were down res this to a 1024, it'd be the same thing as a 2K, down to a 512 would be the same thing as a 1024. And that's how we make these low resolution maps look amazing in games, and that's the reason we did that. But light maps are much smaller, and they're baked in the engine as basically just illumination, light and dark information, so we're going to have no overlap. The next thing we want to do is we want to make sure none are flipped, so we want to avoid flipped UVs, and a lot of ours are actually flipped because of the mirror, but this layout very likely unflipped them. It may not have. The other thing is we want as few seams as possible. So because we've already changed this, you can imagine what we're about to do. Basically, we're going to weld everything back together from the center line, and we're going to unfold it again. So we do need to do a bit of work here to get this looking nice, but nice looking light maps will make a huge difference in baking your character. Now, I'm going to switch to this workspace UV editing so we can see this a little bit easier. And I'm going to keep my set editor up just to make sure we're on the correct set. You don't want to be on map 1 accidentally, but it should be pretty obvious which one we're on. I'll put this off screen though, just so we don't have to see that. Now let's go ahead and start out with the character here. I'm just going to come into the face mode here. I can double click the helmet here. And what I can do is I can go ahead and weld down the center line. So I'm just going to double click this one. And if we take a look at this, we could do a cut, move, and sew. And if I go ahead and turn on this shading, you'll see they're flipped the other way. What I'm going to do now is just select everything here, even the non-character, and just do a quick, Maybe I won't. There's certain areas we might not want to unfold, like these, but yeah, okay. We'll just start with the helmet. We'll do a quick modify unfold, and what you will see is it will fold those out, and I can move these off to the side now since we're going to repack them anyway, and now we have each of these individual objects here, you know, as a continuous surface. Some of these we may end up having to change again. You can see unfolding that unfortunately did unfold it. And we spent some time flattening that out. So if you wanted to, you could undo here, and you could kind of pull this over here. Find the ones that we need to unfold. For example, the UV helmets here. These are the areas that were welded. I'll just select those in shell mode and unfold those. And then when it comes to these individual ones here, you can either flip these and weld them to the respective pieces, or in this instance, just flip them. So this is where the modify flip is going to come in here. So for certain areas like these that we took the time to straighten out so they would take up less space, that's still relevant here. So it can still be worth kind of keeping. Here, I'll just go into face mode and do the modify flip here, and then do the, ooh, interesting. Okay, so it looks like this one needs an unfold. That's unfortunate, but it's okay. We can unfold that. And if we needed to, I'm sure we could come in here and straighten these out again with enough time. An interesting technique that often works is to basically select a bottom vertice like this, scale it into place uniformly, select a top, scale it, and then we could come along each of these. And often in vertice mode, scale these inward. I might start with the outer edges. So this will be a little bit easier. When it comes to border edges in UVs, you do need to scale these in UV mode. The interior ones you can generally scale in edge mode. This is kind of a quick way to lay these out. So something like this would work. Now, you don't necessarily need to go through the process of keeping these straight, which I do want to throw out there. For very quick work, we don't always need to do that. So be mindful of that. Let's go ahead and flip these, and then this area here has the same situation where I kind of welded those. To save myself time, I'll just put the cut back in there. And then with those separated, I then can go into the UV shell here and do a flip on this, and then come in here and weld these by using the move and sew. All right, and that will get my helmet essentially laid out. So we'll want to repeat this process across the board, essentially, just coming in and welding down the center line of the various areas that we have currently unwelded. So I could select the torso, for example, here, just double-click and isolate, double-click that center line down the middle, and we should be able to just do a move and sew on this. So we'll do a move and sew. And I don't know if this one has too many things that have been laid out like the last one where we took the time to do it. But I'll just do a quick unfold on this. So that way these pieces are unfolded out. And I'll go ahead and just repeat this process across the board. I'm not going to worry about laying them out in this instance. I did want to show you that you can. But we're not going to worry about it this time. All right, so same here with the pants. I'll just come in here, double-click this on the edge mode here, do a cut, move and sew, and then that should weld everything back together for the torso. If there's anything on the axe we feel we could do that with, we could. I don't think there is. So in this instance, I'll just go ahead and do an unfold here to just unfold everything. And then with these, I don't really care too much about the directionality, so I'll actually turn on rotate shell, and we can lay these out and pack them all into a single space. Now, one of these looks problematic, whatever this thing is. So this is actually the head, ironically, here. So the head I will want to add some cuts to. In theory, this thing shouldn't bake anyway, but I'll cut right down the middle here. So that way it has some division to it. And we'll go ahead and unfold that. And then we can proceed to layout again. And now these should be functioning. This area too, we could consider putting a cut in. So let me go ahead and find what this is. Let me remove the isolation. Who is this? This is the base skirt here. So I'll probably cut in the front. So we'll just put a cut on that. And then once again, unfold. And you don't have to unfold everything. I'm just going to do it to save time. But that should straighten that out. And then just like we did before, we can do a modify layout. Now, this is where things change with the light maps. Light maps generally need a ton of bleed because they are tiny. Light maps tend to be very small. So whereas we only wanted, a handful of pixels here on our main map in terms of the spacing, just a small little buffer. With light maps, you actually want to have a huge one. So what we can do is we can do a layout here, but we can set this down to the texture map size it's going to be, which is going to be something like a 128. And if we do a 128 with like a 20 pixel shell padding and tiling, this usually comes out decently. And you're going to notice these are super tiny. If we go ahead and hit apply here, they're super small. I don't think I'm going to do 20. We can do kind of a normal amount, like 8. But it's like at 128, 8 pixels is a lot. So you'll see how we get these individual islands. But this is essentially what a light map is going to look like at the end of the day. It's going to be these very small shells kind of spread out like this. And like I mentioned, the main thing we want to remove is any sort of overlap and any sort of symmetry. And that seems counterintuitive, I know, but the difference is this is being baked by the game engine, so the game engine is going to handle that. It's going to actually go across the surface, no problem, and it's going to write those out. If we don't have light maps, the game engine will create some, but when we're doing the super technical stuff like we've been doing here, overlapping these things, a lot of the times that information gets convoluted and distorted, and we do have to manually make these. So this is something that I have done on a lot of assets, and it does make a huge difference. Sometimes you also have to come back in here and kind of troubleshoot the issue, make sure you don't have overlapping, make sure you got everything kind of flipped the right way. So just kind of be mindful. Light mapping is a part of the process, and I encourage you to read up on it on that Polycount forum and practice it. Try and get it onto your character. All right. So once you have this all set, the next stage is to delete the history on this and just go ahead and continue saving out iterations. So we'll just do a save as here, and I'll go ahead and make this final 03 because that makes sense. But we'll get to the final at some point here. But get that set up so that way your character has some light maps. And while you're at it, switch it back to the map 1 here, so that way you're not exporting the light maps as your main channel when you go into other applications, and you'll be good to go. All right, so now that we have that set, let's go ahead and talk a bit about LODs, and then we can start exploring the rigging process on this character. Be sure to like and subscribe so you can catch the next video in the series when it goes live.